Hi everyone, and a very formal and a very warm welcome to this session today. My name is Afaf Noor, and you're going to be with me today and the following 4 days for a AAA Practice to Prepare webinar. I'd just like to, just before I move on to the actual session, I want this session to be very, very interactive. I want you to ask questions, but please do so when I ask you to type in the questions. Throughout the session, my question and answer box where I can see your points is going to remain minimized. However, I will keep taking a look at it to see if you guys have any questions and concerns as well. Also, please remember that we are going to go topic wise. So I would really appreciate it if you could please restrict your questions to the topics for the day. And like I said, I want this to be very interactive when we do the questions. I want you to be giving the answers, particularly if you're a student who's taking the AAA exam for the second or the third time. I want to know how you word your answers so I can actually give you feedback on all of this as well. So without wasting any further time, let's just jump right into it. It is the 2nd of November today, so I really do hope that all of you are comfortable with the paper pattern, but I'm just going to go over the basic concepts so that we all know where we're at. So section A in the AAA case question paper is going to be a 50-mark case study, which could have any marks between, any parts between A to F. So some papers would have 4 parts, some could have 5 parts, some could have 6 parts as well. However, it's very important, and I will talk about this tomorrow as well. This 50 marks is split into 46 technical marks and 4 professional marks. So in tomorrow's agenda, when we do a question of risk assessment, which is a case study, I'll tell you the easiest way to get 4 out of 4 in the AAA exam. So every single one of you, it doesn't matter whether you know the technical aspect or not, I will tell you what the easy way of getting these 4 marks is. So question number 1, 50-mark case study, 46 technical marks. We're not stopping here. The examiner has specified that this case study is going to be set primarily at the planning stage of audit. So a significant portion of this case study is going to test you on risk assessment. So risk assessment is on our agenda for tomorrow. This could include business risk, audit risk, or both as well. So she has specified there's 100% certainty that there's going to be a requirement on risk. In terms of trend, there is always some part which expects you to discuss audit procedures, and there are some parts which relate to what we're doing today as well. So I normally call it section A, B, and C of the syllabus, which is basically from the syllabus guideline. So normally she would have one part which tests you on the ethical aspects, on practice management, etc., as well. So the yellow part is more of a trend analysis. The blue part is what the examiner has specified in the syllabus guide as well. Section B is going to have 2 25 marks questions, and your examiner has specified that at least one question is going to be from the completion and reporting stage of audit. So I've had quite a few kids coming to me and saying, Afaf, you said reporting, there was only 7 marks on reporting. Please understand, completion and reporting means at the final level, problems you've found, further discussions that you might need to do, further procedures that might need to be performed, etc., etc. So we are going to be covering completion and reporting on day 4 of this session. So she has specified that at least one 25-mark question is going to be from the completion and reporting stage of audit. The second 25-mark question can be from any part of the syllabus. So any area of the syllabus, there's absolutely no trend. This could be an entire question on procedures. It could be an entire question on other assignments. It could be an entire question on ethics. There is absolutely no trend to this at all. Please understand, and this is the case with all papers for ACCA strategic professional level and other papers as well, there is absolutely no way you can have selective studies. So in the AAA exam in particular, you cannot hope to skip a topic and think, oh my God, just because I've left this topic, I can still pass this paper. So be very careful that every single question in this paper is compulsory. You have to do it, and it could be from any part of the syllabus as well. This is the actual syllabus, and I'm going to talk about this in terms of how these sessions are going to be divided as well. We are going to focus on syllabus areas A, B, and C today. So this is the agenda for day one. This is a very easy and a very boring part to study, but it is super difficult to get marks in this area. So the session today is going to focus on understanding the techniques, picking up the points, and I will do a knowledge recap as well. We then have in the syllabus, we then have external audit. So we have the planning stage, we have procedures and evidence, and then subsequently we have completion and reporting. Tomorrow we're going to cover planning, day 3 is procedures, and day 4 is completion and reporting. And then you have other assignments and current issues. Now, other assignments, there are a number of other assignments. You have prospective financial information, due diligence, audit of performance information, etc., etc. And we are going to cover some of these other assignments on day 5 along with practice. As far as the current issues are concerned, your examiner is super nice. She has mentioned that if she wants to test you on a current issue, she would actually first give a technical article on this as well. So although it's very important for you to be aware of what's happening around the world in terms of different audit reform proposals, etc., I think it's safe to assume that you can actually wait for a technical article, and then you can sort of be assured that you're going to be tested on the current issue in the upcoming sessions. In terms of marks, remember, the first red star means 25 marks for sure in question number 1. The second red star means 25 marks for sure in question number 2 or 3. For the rest of it, there's absolutely no trend at all, but actually questions are tested from across the syllabus. So I hope at this point in time, most of you, if not all, have completed your preparation stage. Like I said, you have about a month to go. You can safely start your practice today and still have a fair chance of getting through the paper. This is an area that I need to focus on, particularly if you're a candidate who has taken this exam a number of times and you're struggling to pass this paper. Now, I've been teaching this paper for over 15 years, and I think I've honestly never had a student who's come to me and say, Afaf, I failed the paper because I did not know the answer. It's always, I knew the answer, I wasn't able to complete the paper. Or I knew the answer, I don't know why I failed. I thought I should be getting marks in 60s, I actually got 39. So what you see on the screen right now are common reasons for failure in this exam. Remember, the global pass rate for the AAA exam is in its 30s, which isn't that great a percentage. So your examiner has specified, and you can see this across different examiner reports, across different technical articles as well. She said the most common reasons for failure can be categorized into 4 main parts. Number 1, you don't know your auditing standards. Now, any student who's actually studied this paper through a study text, through a learning partner, or anything at all, you should be completely comfortable with the audit knowledge. So you should know, you don't need to know the auditing standards in detail. What you do need to know or have are the basic concepts. Then, and in my opinion, the second one is the more frequent reason, lack of accounting knowledge. Please remember, everything that you have done in SBR is assumed knowledge for this paper. So your examiner has specified that any student who has not studied SBR should not take the AAA exam. I'm not talking about passing SBR, I'm talking about studying it. So you would note in most cases, if you're unable to pick up an accounting standard, you won't be able to audit it. Remember, auditing is simply confirming whether the accounting standards have been followed or not. So if you don't know what impairment indicators are, if you don't know what disclosure requirements for operating segments are, for example, then you won't be able to pick up these points from the scenario. So the first reason for failure is not having the required knowledge. If you're studying with a tuition provider, you would have covered the knowledge. If not, I hope and I'm assuming you would have studied the study text from approved publishers. The second reason is not applying your knowledge to the scenario. Please understand, AAA is a strategic professional level exam. There is no way you can pass this paper by learning anything. So you could learn every single page of BPP or Kaplan study text, and you could still be getting 2 or 3 out of 100. Because unless you are able to apply that knowledge to the scenario, you won't be able to get even anything even close to the passing marks. Something combined is not attempting the pass exams. I really do hope you guys haven't made this mistake, because if you haven't done the pass exams before you actually go to your exam, there's no way you can pass this paper. And attempting pass exams does not mean read the question, read the answer. If you're unable to write down the answer to every single question, that's absolutely fine. If there are 80 questions in the revision kit, I don't expect you to attempt all 80 of them by hand. However, all 80 need to be attempted one way or the other. So for example, what we're going to do today and the following 4 days, read the question, jot down the key answer points, and then read the answer actively. Active reading of the answer basically means you're looking at answering techniques, you're looking at the language, you're looking at the marking scheme. So the examiner for AAA has always said that in my life, there are 2 types of languages. They could be English language or it could be audit language. So she says, even if you don't know the English language, I don't care, you can easily pass this paper. However, if you're unable to write your answer in the audit language, you're not going to be able to pass the paper. So as most of you might not have worked in audit, the best way to understand the answering techniques and the language is through reading the answers. So I read the case study for the first time. I could only find 3 risks. In the standard answer, there were 8 risks. Underline the ones that you missed out on, underline the way they were answered, and then in the next case study, be alert to such problems or such risks as well. So please understand, without attempting the latest revision kit, try and make sure it's the revision kit which is valid for 2021 and 2022. Without attempting these kits, you cannot actually pass this paper at all. And subsequently, you need to make sure you complete the exam. I'm sure there might be exceptions. So there could be some person who could say, I attempted 80% of the paper and I passed. They are the exception. Normally, if you miss out on any marks more than 4 or 5 out of 100, there's a high likelihood that you won't be able to get through. So as a AAA trainer, we have to understand that in the coming sessions today and the rest of the 4 sessions, I can't help you with your knowledge. I can recap it, sort of give you a checklist. I will help you in applying your knowledge to the scenario. I will help you in telling you how you can have a fair chance of completing the questions. So if you are aware of answering techniques, you can convert the techniques into headings. If you are aware of how to manage your time, and if you have the required knowledge from your earlier preparation, you should be able to get through this exam in the upcoming December attempt. I'll open up the chat box in just a little while. I just want to talk about how the sessions are going to run. Like I said, day 1 is syllabus area A, B, and C. I'm going to first start out with a technical knowledge checklist. It is realistically not possible to recap the entire knowledge for you, but for each topic, I'll put in front of you sort of like a checklist, and I'll quickly go over the key areas so that you know which areas you have to be comfortable with to be able to attempt the questions. Then my main focus is going to be answering techniques. I'm going to tell you what the answering techniques are. I'm going to tell you what the marking scheme for that particular topic is. And then I've chosen questions that we're going to attempt. So how this will go is, I'm going to give you time to read the question and tell me what comes to your mind. I'll comment on some of your answers, or all, depending on how many answers are given, and then I will do a debrief. While I'm doing the question debrief, my entire focus is going to be on you applying your knowledge to the given scenario. I have made it a point to select questions which are slightly on the difficult side in terms of either the requirement or mark allocation, and I'll try and attempt questions which are from the latest papers as well. Not all of them, but some of them are going to be from the latest exams. So it'll be a mix of everything that can sort of cover the technical portion of that particular topic. So keeping all of this in mind, this is the plan, and you can see this. I got this handout uploaded in the handout section as well. Today we're focusing on sections A, B, and C, and going to open up the chat box, see if you have any questions at all. I'm just going to be opening this. Okay, I've had a student who said I cannot hear. I'm assuming that was sorted out, because otherwise I would have been talking to myself, and I hope that's not the case. If there are any questions regarding what the plan is, anything that you want to discuss, please feel free to ask this. I would love to have proof of life. Yes, the lectures are going to be recorded. So yes, as far as I'm aware, the recording is going to be available to you as well. I'm not sure about the timelines, but yes, they will be recorded. Okay, I have a very good question coming through. Unfortunately, I can't send you my notes. The reason being, I work for Scans, so that's a learning provider, and I can't really give you my notes. So I'm going to try and give you the key summary portion. So for example, I've uploaded the ethics portion, but the rest I unfortunately can't share. Please, 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 Mohammed Yusuf and those who were asking earlier on, this is AAA. There is no list of important questions. There is no list of important accounting standards. So there is no such list. That's what I said, because having such a list would basically mean me telling you these are important and these are not, and that is not how AAA works at all. So on day 3, I'm going to put up the list of standards for which procedures can be tested, and I'll tell you the ones which have been frequently tested in the past and the ones which have never been tested. You can absolutely do this in 1 month. Absolutely, yes. So whichever revision pack you're using, see, your entire focus has to be on practice. So for example, if you're using revision kit for BPP or Kaplan, and that revision kit has 80 questions, divide this into the next 20 days and cover that number of questions every day. And yes, you should be able to prepare this. You need to have commitment. You need to make sure you actually follow the techniques that we discuss. And subsequently, you have a very good chance of being able to complete the questions and pass this paper as well. So yes, there is enough time to prepare this. Will I be giving a study plan? Unfortunately, no. I think your study plan could literally be what we're doing every day, or your study plan could be what I said earlier, Zunaira. If you could just divide the revision kit into number of questions and just do those every day. See, I can't give you a study plan because I don't really know what material you're using to prepare this. So for my own students at scans, what I normally do is, because I refer the BPP kit to them, I've made a topic-wise mapping document for the latest BPP kit. So I've told them, once you've finished planning, these are the 20 parts that you have to do. Once you've finished procedures, these are the parts that you have to do. But that's because I know which revision kit they're using. I know which sequence they're covering the topics in because they're studying with me and all of that. I can share that plan with you because it's for the BPP kit, the latest one. I can put that up in the handout section sometime tomorrow. So anyone who uses the latest revision kit, which is the September 21 to June 22 one, they can actually use that plan. Right, guys, I'm just going to minimize the question and answer box and start with the actual topics now. I'm sorry if I missed out on any of the questions. I'll try and have a look once you're reading through the rest of the topics, and I'll answer them if I've missed any important one. Right, guys. So like I said, I'm going to be boring you for a little while because this is where I'm going to give you a checklist along with sort of like a brief overview of the topics that you should know for syllabus areas A, B, and C. So remember, like I said, we're going to be focusing on areas which are super easy to study, but super difficult to get marks in. And once I've covered this overview, then I'm going to be doing questions with you as well. So starting off with the first topic, which is your regulatory environment. This has two parts to it. So regulatory environment covers laws and regulations, and it covers money laundering as well, which is also a law. Starting off with the first one. So if I talk about A1, the first topic is laws and regulations, and this is what you need to know. Remember, every single word that I say is important because this is actually my answering technique as well. So as per your auditing standards, you need to be very comfortable with the duties of the management regarding compliance. Remember, they need to have a strong system of internal control which can prevent and detect breaches, and they are the ones who have to ensure compliance with all types of laws and regulations. As the external auditor, I need to understand the regulatory environment. Please remember, every single law is not my headache. I will only be affected if that particular breach has an effect on the financial statements. So as an auditor, I need to understand the regulatory environment. I need to perform two types of procedures. First, to identify whether a law has been breached, and then scenario-specific procedures on the suspected breach as well. And at the end of it, I have to decide where I have to report the non-compliance. So the minute you pick up that this is a non-compliance question, the first thing you're going to explain are the responsibilities of the management and external auditor. In terms of procedures to identify breach, you can prepare this from whichever study text you're using. I'm just going to recap a few main points. As external auditors, I have to make sure I go through all minutes of board meetings. I can get in touch with the legal advisor. I can have discussions with the management and those charged with governance. I can look at correspondence with regulatory authorities. I can get a written representation from the management. But in step number 2, this is me putting in effort to see if a breach has occurred. So point number 2 is primarily going to be straightforward, where you as the external auditor, as a part of your duties, have to see if any law has been breached. And then comes the important part. In the question, once you identify suspected breach, this is where you're going to get most of your marks. As an auditor and as a AAA student, there are certain procedures that you have to perform for certain to identify how big that breach is and what the impact is going to be. So as per your auditing standards, I'm so sorry, I don't know where that went. As per your auditing standards, there are a number of procedures that you have to perform. Like I said, it's very difficult for me to talk about certain areas because I don't know which notes you're preparing from, but there's a very clear-cut summary of steps that you have to follow in order to decide whether this breach is important or not. I'm just going to write down a few of the points to see if you can eventually link them to the answer as well. So using the case, find out which law has actually been breached. Is it environmental law? Is it health and safety? Is it employment law? You get marks for identifying, by the way, I think this particular law has been breached. Read the question and find out if you feel this is intentional. Was anyone in the management or those charged with governance aware of this? So if there's any indication that directors were aware of this, you automatically talk about the fact that this is indicative of the fact that there are concerns about management integrity. This is also indicative of the fact that this client has weak internal control systems. So every single step that I write in light blue is actually my answering technique. Super, super important. You will have to think of the financial statement impact. You get lots of marks for saying a suspected breach has occurred. If there's a probable outflow, a provision would need to be made. If it's a possible penalty, then a disclosure might need to be given. So you get lots of marks for talking about the financial statement impact, and then you can talk about procedures to confirm the probability and amount. To confirm the probability and amount of the fines that might need to be paid. So if I just very quickly put this into the context of a AAA question, you were, as auditors, you were auditing a client who had a warehouse which they rented out to third parties for storing something. One day, you were passing by a room where the door was open and you saw these big barrels which said, caution, explosive material. The scenario is finished. As auditors, what do you need to do next? Now, in the entire question, there is absolutely no indication that this is a law question, but you know holding such explosive, dangerous materials could go against health and safety law. So you get 1 mark for saying, I'm going to do this in dark blue. You get 1 mark for saying this is health and safety law. I'm going to have a discussion with the management to find out whether they were aware of this. If they were, this is indicative of management being of poor integrity and weak internal controls. I'll have to find out whether the chances of a fine are probable and possible. Based on that, it would either be a provision or a contingent liability disclosure. In terms of procedures, I could contact the lawyer. I could check correspondence between the lawyer and the client. I could look at minutes of board meetings to find out what are the chances that fines might need to be paid and how much would they be. So as auditors, we need to, in step number 2, put in effort to look for breaches myself. Plus, in step number 3, which is what is tested in the AAA exam as scenario-based questions, you have to perform procedures to actually confirm the impact of the breach, etc., etc. Even if she doesn't ask, you have to wrap up by talking about reporting. So you need to prepare the different levels of reporting. Please understand, you will report suspected non-compliance to management and those charged with governance. If the financial statement issue is not sorted out, this will go in your audit report. However, extra marks for talking about external reporting. Sometimes the breach could be so huge that you might actually need to report this to external authorities. So as AAA students, the 4 steps that you see on this screen right now are actually your 4 steps to your answer as well. This is how your ISA 250 is made. You don't need to learn the numbers at all, but this is how you come up with the answer. So she would give you a mini scenario. She's going to just tell you this has happened, and the requirement might not even use the word law. The requirement could simply say, okay, tell me what does the auditor have to do next. In terms of the techniques, this is what I've said. First thing you have to do is explain number 1 above. So explain the responsibilities of the management and those charged with governance, and explain your own responsibilities. Then write the answer to step number 3, making sure you link it to the scenario. So the purple 1 to 6 are actually 6 to 7 different marks. And even if she did not ask, you have to wrap up everything by talking about reporting. So very quickly, to the management, to those charged with governance, to the shareholders through the audit report, but super important, maybe to external authorities if you feel this is against public interest. So you get super easy marks for talking about the reporting that has to take place once a breach has been identified. So the first part of regulatory environment is laws and regulations. The second part is money laundering. I'm not opening up the chat box right now because unfortunately I won't be able to spend too much time on focusing on the knowledge aspect. My focus has to be on practice rather than telling you what the knowledge aspect is. The second part, so A2, is basically money laundering, and most of you find this topic very, very easy. You should be very comfortable with the 3 stages: placement, layering, and integration. So you initially hide the money, then you layer it, trying to lose the audit trail, and integration is you're trying to use that money in an apparent legitimate transaction, trying to show that this is all nice and legal. Your super easy marks, very frequently tested, you should know what the contents of an anti-money laundering program are. So having an MLRO, what is that person meant to do? Conducting customer due diligence or know your client procedures, making sure you retain all working papers for a minimum of 5 years, having a culture at the firm where you assess risks related to money laundering, conduct training, etc. All of these need to be learned. When she's in a good mood, she'll always test you for about 6-7 marks and ask you to explain contents of an anti-money laundering program. Please remember, when you suspect money laundering, very important, the audit team has to report the suspicion to the money laundering reporting officer. This is that senior qualified individual. and the MLRO will decide if there is any external reporting needed. So you have to be very careful that you understand, as an audit senior junior manager, you cannot report to external authorities directly. You'll have to report your suspicion to the firm's MLRO. And when you suspect money laundering, please do not go tell the client. So if you suspect that the owner manager is committing money laundering, don't go and be super clever and say, ha, I know what you're doing, because that is a criminal offense. If you tip him off, that person is going to hide the trail of that illegal money, and the financial intelligence authorities will not be able to track him or her. So the first part of your entire syllabus area A is a checklist that you need to be completely comfortable with. Are we okay with this? Please don't ask me to explain a particular topic, because I can't do that. I won't have time. Do ask me answering techniques. If you're not comfortable, because with laws and regulations, that's the biggest problem. Either I'm unable to pick up this is a suspected breach, or if I have, I don't know how to get 6-7 marks. So I know it's a breach, but what am I supposed to write for 7 marks? The answer is on the screen right now. This is what you have to do for 6-7 marks. Any questions, guys? I've just done the first part, giving it a minute to see if you guys have any questions at all, and then I'll go on to the second part. Okay, I've had no questions coming through. I'm not sure why. Okay, moving on then. The next part, which is syllabus area B, and I can assure you that if you don't prepare it the way I'm going to tell you, you won't be able to get through this section at all. The second part, which is syllabus area B, covers code of ethics and fraud and professional liability. Now, normally when I give a topic a star, that means it is going to be 100% certain that this topic will come up in your actual exam. So it's there either in question number 1 or in question number 2, 3, or maybe all 3 questions as well. Please remember, you have no option but to learn the code of ethics. In order to do so, I've gotten a handout uploaded, which looks like this. So this is what I want you to use to learn the entire code. So basically what happens is, and I've seen this in students' answers as well, if there is gift and hospitality, you cannot fit in advocacy, because the code says there's only self-interest, familiarity, and intimidation. If there is fee dependence, there is only self-interest and intimidation. Please do not fit in familiarity. So what I've done is, and this is unfortunately a long handout, but again, it's 10 pages. You can cover it over the next 10 days. So try and learn each page one day, because learning is the only option you have. I'll talk about the answering techniques in just a second, but for some threads, so if I just look at, I'll give you a frequently tested one. For recent service with an audit client, you can get up to 6-7 marks if you have simply prepared what you see on the screen right now. Temporary staff assignment, very frequently tested. If anyone has taken this exam before, you would see that this is one of our favorite ethical issues to test. And you could easily get up to 7 marks in explaining what the threats are and subsequently what the safeguards are as well. So the only recommendation I have for professional and ethical considerations part 1 is please use the handout to learn the code. It will make your life and marks very, very easy. Then the second part is professional fraud and professional liability. Remember, there are two types of fraud. You have fraudulent financial reporting and you have misappropriation of assets. So fraudulent financial reporting is where you're playing around with figures. So you're showing extra sales, you're trying to hide your liabilities and expenses, etc., etc. Misappropriation of asset is when you're actually stealing company assets in one form or the other. So using the company phone for personal use is also misappropriation. Actually stealing money, embezzlement is also misappropriation. Whenever you pick up that fraud has happened at the audit client, once again, you start off with explaining the responsibilities of the management and external auditor. It's the management's responsibility to have a strong system of internal control and a system of and a culture of honesty. This is the important part because I genuinely feel you guys lose out on easy marks by not covering it step by step. The minute you pick up that this is a fraud question, you have to talk about the fact that external auditors only give reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material fraud and error. So I'm not giving a guarantee, it is only reasonable assurance and my focus is on material areas only. However, in spite of my best effort, there is always a chance that I might never find the fraud. For example, and she writes this in her standard answers, if fraud has been done through collusion, or if the management has used sophisticated accounting techniques, or if it's an immaterial fraud of very small amounts, etc. So you start off with explaining that as an auditor, I'm only giving reasonable assurance and I'm only going to do that on material fraud and error. However, as a part of my responsibility, I need to maintain an attitude of professional skepticism. There has to be a planning meeting at the planning stage where the entire audit team sits together and discusses areas which are susceptible to fraud and error. So they're going to discuss which areas have a higher chance of fraud and error. I need to make sure there is risk assessment and analytical procedures are conducted. When I find fraud, write down in your answer, this is indicative of weak internal controls and I'll have to increase testing in that area. So if you find fraud in payroll, you can get 1 mark for saying this means controls in payroll are weak. Another mark for saying as auditors, I'll have to increase testing in that area. So, and again, this is something that is being tested over and over again. Some of the papers are not published, but my students, because I have students in every single exam attempt, they've come back to me and say, this was tested and this came up. So quite often in a scenario combined with other topics, you would have the client blaming the auditor for not identifying fraud and you writing in your answer, hang on, calm down, this was my responsibility, this is what I was supposed to do, and in spite of all of this, there's still a chance that I could not find fraud and error. The next two topics have not been tested in a very long time, but this is still an area which would be easy marks. Remember, in order to be proven negligent, you need to see whether there was an act of default. In other words, was the auditor negligent? Was there financial loss? So did the client actually face financial loss? And who the external auditor would be liable to? And you should learn how I can restrict professional liability. So this has not been come up in the exams for a very long time, but this is easy stuff that you should be comfortable with if this comes up in the exam. So fitting this onto the screen now, syllabus area B is code of ethics and fraud along with professional liability. Any questions, guys? By the way, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier as well. Don't worry about taking screenshots. At the end of every session, I'm going to upload these annotated slides as well. So I'm going to ask for these handouts to be uploaded. So all these handouts with my horrific writing and the checklist points are going to be made available to you. So please don't worry about taking screenshots and thinking, oh my God, I'm missing out on all of that. All right, could I have proof of life by any one of you saying, yes, all is okay? Or maybe saying, oh my God, I know nothing about any of this. I have 90 participants online, and you're slightly worrying me by not asking me anything at the moment. Or maybe it's my question answer box. That's okay. Okay. Zurera, could you type in the question again? I missed it. It's gone up and it's not visible to me anymore. Could you just type in your question again? I just saw again. That's the only thing I can read, Zurera. I think I need to resize my question box as well. I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself. I think while you guys are doing the question, I'm going to have a look at the entire question. So all good, all is okay. Oh, so I missed all of that. Oh, super. All right, got it, super guys. Sorry. See, I was missing all of that. And I felt as if I was talking to myself. All right, the last one then. So then you have practice management, and I tried to fit in the relevant information. That's syllabus area C. So the last area, super easy to study, very difficult to get marks in. This has 3 parts to this. Quality control is a term that you're very likely to see in every single exam question. So, sorry, exam attempt, not question. So along with code of ethics, this is the second one, which is comment on quality control, which comes up quite a lot. There are elements of quality control that you need to be comfortable with. I don't want you to learn them, just be comfortable with them. For example, you should know that in external audit, it is the engagement partner who is the leader responsible for overall quality. You need to make sure the code of ethics is followed, otherwise quality is compromised. Before accepting, all of these procedures need to be performed, otherwise quality might be compromised. Your audit team should have the required skills, etc. Then, very, very important, direction is set at the planning stage, always by the engagement partner. So if the engagement partner wasn't there at the planning stage, a huge quality issue, that direction was not set properly. Supervision has to be ongoing. So throughout the audit, the partner and the managers should be dropping by to find out how the work has been done. Consultation basically means, and this is your favorite word as a AAA student, if there are certain areas you're not comfortable with, please get an expert to help you. So if you can't work on actuarial valuation in employee benefits, get an expert, otherwise quality would be compromised. Very frequently tested, your review has to be hierarchical. Hierarchical basically means your engagement partner is going to review the manager's work. The manager will review the senior's work. The seniors will review the junior's work. So unless there's a hierarchical review, your quality has been compromised. So in quite a few exam questions, the partner told juniors to test or check each other's work. And you would say, hang on, that's completely wrong. Quality has been compromised because they're the same level. They won't be able to pick up problems at all. Please remember, and I know most of you might confuse this, quality control review is always done by an independent partner. So this is not done by the engagement partner. It has to be done by an independent partner. For listed companies, it is mandatory to do a QCR before the audit report is signed. So if your client is listed, you need to get a QCR done by an independent partner just before the report is signed. And make sure you document everything. So I normally tell my full-time students, remember it like this. Even if you said good morning to the client, document it. Please don't take this literally. That basically means any work, any procedure that has been done needs to be put in writing, because if it's not documented, it's not done. So normally she would give you a mini scenario and she would ask you to comment on quality control, and you'll have to pick up all of these points from the scenario. The next part is obtaining new clients. Very simple, not very frequently tested, but easy marks. So you should know that I can get clients by advertising. You should know ACCA's guidelines for advertising. You should know I can get clients by submitting a tender, learn the contents of a tender document. The last topic, and remember, star means very important. So my last topic for this section gets a star. Quite often, she's going to test on factors to consider before you accept a new client. This could be for audit or it could be for other engagements as well. I'm only focusing on audit today. You get a separate mark for saying to see if free staff is available. Can you complete the audit in the timelines that the client wants you to complete it in? Do you have experience of the relevant industry? So maybe you've only audited manufacturing clients. This time it's a financial institution. Use the code of ethics to see if there are any ethical issues. Remember, you're not a charity. You need to consider commercial considerations. So in some questions, she would say, the client has said, we don't really have a lot of money, so please don't charge us a lot of fee. So you would have to write, a factor to consider is whether conducting this audit without compromising on quality is possible in such less fee. Know your client or customer due diligence is very important. This is where you're going to be looking at who the key owners are, what the registered address is, what the business does, etc., etc. Use the case to look for risk factors. Any issues regarding management's integrity, any issues regarding problems the client has faced in the past. Remember, if this is a problematic client, this is going to affect your fee and time taken. Remember, if you associate with a problematic client, this could also affect your reputation as well. So very important factors to consider are the risks associated with accepting this client. And finally, very, very important, you cannot accept an audit if the preconditions of an audit have not been met. This includes the reporting framework, directors acknowledging their responsibilities, and giving us unlimited access to all records and information. So whichever material you're using, please make sure you learn the factors to consider, because these are a combination of straightforward and scenario-based marks that you can actually get in the exam. So if I quickly go back to my original slide, just give me a second. This is what I've recapped just now. Laws, regulations, money laundering, code of ethics, fraud and professional liability, quality control, obtaining new clients and accepting new clients. Easy to study, a bit of learning involved, but very difficult to get marks in. Any questions, guys? If I could have a quick confirmation, if there's anything you need clarity on. Today is the only day where the revision is taking so long because the questions that I'm going to do, they'll become very easy if you actually remember what I've just discussed with you guys right now. All right. I think once you guys are doing the question, I'll play around with the question answer box to make it bigger because I seem to be having trouble in weighing all the questions together. Anyway, guys, I'm now going to slow down because everything that I did for the past 56 minutes was sort of a recap of stuff that I thought or assumed you should already know. Now I'm going to talk about what my responsibility for this session is. Now, in terms of section A, B, and C, most of the time, your questions are going to be worded like this. So she is going to give you a scenario. It could be half a page, it could be full page, but she'll give you that scenario. And in the requirement, she would say, comment on the ethical, quality control, professional, and other issues. The examiner is actually giving you hints by wording it like this. If she says comment on the ethical issues, she's basically telling you that there are some points that you can link to the code of ethics as well. So this handout. So she's basically telling you that read the scenario and there is some discussion that you can get marks for in terms of the ethical issues. Let's cover this first. Your examiner has said that there is a format or a sequence that you need to follow for ethical issues, which will make it much easier for you to get marks. So I'll do the format first, and then I'll do an example where I fit in the format. She says, always start off by identifying the threats by using words from the scenario. Most of you would write, this is a self-interest threat. And the marker will say, this is the 0, because I have no idea what you're talking about. You need to give me a heading or at least one word. At least tell me which issue you're going to be talking about. And then my marks start. You have to name and explain the threat. A lot of you would write, because they've taken out a loan, there is a self-interest threat, full stop. Because you cannot get marks for simply naming it, you would get a 0. Please remember, you will have to explain each threat properly. Then tell me what the code says about it. So what does the code say about this particular threat? And then give me a conclusion for the given scenario. Let's do an example. Okay, so I'm going to read this with you and then I'll apply this to the given scenario as well. Okay, just going to minimize this for a second. Start from the beginning. So your audit client is Turner Co., a listed financial institution, and they offer loans and credit facilities to commercial and retail customers. An audit team member, Jeanette, has provisionally agreed to take out a loan with Turner to finance the purchase of a domestic residence. The loan will be secured on the property, and the client's business manager has promised her that they will ensure she gets the very best deal that the bank can offer. So the minute you see this scenario, you have to think of the threat from the actual handout that you would have learned. So let me just find that. Just give me a second. Sorry, your screen is going to be moving a bit. Apologies for that. I'm just going to scroll down and identify your learning element. Look at this. So if I have learned the code, I know there is only one threat in this given scenario. So I'm going to write that down. Identification is me saying Jeanette has provisionally agreed to take out a loan from a client. Remember, this is me telling them that this is an area I'm talking about. Explain self-interest. So you will write, this is a self-interest threat. Jeanette's judgment might be compromised due to financial interest. So literally 1 mark for explaining what self-interest is. Then you have to explain what the code says. So the code says it is only allowed if it is in normal course of business under normal lending conditions. So I get 1 mark for copy pasting literally what the code says. And then I have to do an evaluation so I can give a conclusion. Is this a normal course of business? Yes, because it's a financial institution. Is this normal business terms? I don't know. What do you mean by the very best deal the bank can offer? If these are terms they would offer to any client, then sure, there's no problem. However, if it's favorable terms, then you have to decline the loan. So Jeanette will either have to say no to the loan or she can be removed from this team as well. So you get 1 mark for evaluating and 1 mark for the conclusion. So 4 marks for commenting on the ethical issue. I'm going to scroll back up. Remember, in scenarios where there's more than one threat, you get separate marks. So for employment with the client, you get 3 separate marks for explaining each separate threat. Going to open up the chat box. We've done the first part, which is if she says comment on the ethical threats, you'll have to pick up the threat from the scenario. You'll have to learn the code and in the actual exam, give the answer in the sequence that you see on the screen right now. Any questions, guys? So I'm just going to quickly scroll back up and fit that in. So threat, it could be more than one, code, and then a conclusion for the given scenario. All right. All right then. When she says comment on quality control, right? So the next hint is quality control. Remember, we've done this. That means she's giving you a hint that all the elements of quality control that are just discussed above, direction, supervision, hierarchical review, etc., all of that needs to be thought about, and some of those points would need to be linked to the scenario. So for example, if they have asked the juniors to check each other's work, you get 1 mark for saying there's no hierarchical review and you will not be able to assure quality on this audit. If the partner went on a vacation at the planning stage and the planning meeting was led by the supervisor, then you would say there's lack of proper direction. In some questions, they would write the engagement partner came on the first day of the audit and then the last day, and the entire audit was done by seniors. You would say there was no ongoing supervision. So when she says comment on quality control, she's giving you hints that there's some parts in the requirement that can be linked to quality control as well. I think potentially the most problematic part would be professional and other issues. This basically means there are some auditing standards that might not have been followed, or potentially some IFRS accounting issues that were not picked up by the client. Remember, professionally, the way I do my audit is guided by your auditing standards. So when she says comment on professional issues, she expects you to talk about whether the way I did my audit was okay or not. So for example, frequently tested. They set materiality at the planning stage and they never revised it. I know professionally, according to ISAs, that is wrong. You need to keep reviewing materiality. If the risk goes up, materiality goes down. In another example, they were not using statistical sampling. You know, ISAs say that this is wrong. Your sample could be biased. Detection risk could go up. They completely skipped substantive testing. You know professionally that is wrong because substantive testing is the basic issue. And sometimes if she asks you to comment on next steps, that would depend on the issues that you have found out. For ethical threats, the next steps are automatically covered in the answer. So when you talk about the conclusion, that's automatically covered. For the rest of them, it could be 1 or 2 marks for saying, we're going to report this to the audit committee, we're going to report this to the quality manager of the firm, etc., etc. So normally, by writing these words, she's trying to make your life easier by giving you hints about which elements are tested. Or sometimes, if she's in a bad mood, she will not write anything and simply say, discuss the implication. So she would give you an email or a note and say, okay, tell me as auditors, what am I going to do next? So this time around, you have to think of syllabus areas A, B, and C and come up with the answers yourself. In all cases, your marking scheme is 1 mark per point all the time. So if it's a 15-mark question, then you will have to write 15 points. But remember, for ethical issues, you could actually get 6-7 marks for one threat, just one threat as well. So sometimes if it's a 15-mark question, if you've learned your code properly, then this should not be a problem at all. One last thing that I want you to understand in terms of syllabus areas A, B, and C, the 3 areas that we have covered, we know it is 1 mark per point, but you have to make sure you have time managed each part. So in the actual exam, if for example, part A is 10 marks, the rule is 1.5 minutes per mark. You will not spend more than, you will not spend more than 15 minutes on this one. So your examiner says if you use this rule, you have a much higher chance of passing the paper. Part B is 6 marks. I'm going to complete my answer as much as I know in 9 minutes and move on to part C. So she is saying when you are writing down the answer, please allocate time to each part, because if you end up spending 30 minutes on a 10-mark answer, you won't be able to complete your paper at all. My technique portion is entirely covered, guys. I'm just going to scroll a bit back up to put this on the screen right now and see if you guys have any questions. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to type in the questions. All right, could I have proof of life, please? I am slightly concerned that I'm missing out on questions because the last one that I can see, which is visible to me, is from Zunaira saying again. That's the last one that I can see. So if I could please have some confirmation. Okay. Not sure what's happening. Scrolling all the way back down, guys. Please bear with me for a minute. Right, guys, I'm just going to take a 1-minute break to find out why the question screen isn't visible to me properly. Just give me a second. Okay, I'm back. I can finally see this. Thank you so much. I was asking for support to be able to view the questions. My last comment that I can view was at 5:46, which is Pakistan time, I'm sorry. So that means it's been a good half an hour since I've had any comment at all. Could I please have confirmation that you guys are all right? Okay, so Amjad has confirmed. Okay, super. All right, guys, super. Now they are visible. It's all clear now, guys. Okay, I've had some questions that have been asked. Touch on the professional issues, identifying the standards. Time management is a big issue, Zishan has said. Reading questions and further actions. Got it. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry, I can just actually view all the questions now. I'm going to take 5 minutes to answer them one by one. Okay, Abdul Rahman, I won't be able to give feedback on your answers. Then you have Edward. Yes, the recording is going to be available. Yes, Majid, for the code of ethics, just learn the handout. That should be enough. Salva, very quickly, there are 3 parts to the precondition. Is the financial reporting framework appropriate and prescribed by law? Do the directors acknowledge their responsibility regarding financial statement preparation? And will the auditors be given unlimited access to information and records? Obtaining new points, Zanera, is a whole list that you can actually review that I put on the screen. There is, Zishan, there is no exam technique for money laundering. You literally have to pick up indicators from the scenario and tell me why this is indicative of money laundering. For fraud, start off with responsibilities and answer in the sequence in which I revise the topic and simply link it to the scenario. Abdullah Samir, no changes to section A, B, and C since June 2021. No, there is no WhatsApp group. Zahur, yes, you can give a subheading for identifying a threat. Amir, no, the rules have not changed for listed companies. The code was revised a long time ago for listed companies. Salva, further actions could potentially for 1 or 2 marks mean whatever quality ethical problems you have found, you should discuss this with the firm's quality control partner. So the quality control partner will tell you what needs to be done next. Ans, for reading time. Ans, are you from my current batch? Because your name is exactly the same as the current batch. Anyway, for the reading time is, there is no guideline as such, however long it takes to do a quick reading. 5 minutes maybe for a short question. Zishan, you'll have to be very strict with your time management. Answer within 10 minutes and then stop. Even if you know more answers, do not write anymore. Godfrey, the professional issues, there is no list at all. Whatever you've studied in audit, every single thing that you've studied in audit, if it's not being done correctly, that becomes your professional issue. So literally, whatever you've covered in audit, if that's not followed properly, then ultimately that becomes your professional issue. Devani, I think the recordings will be available hopefully by tomorrow, and same case with the handouts as well. Ah, Ans, no wonder. Good approach, Ans, huh? All right, guys. So I'm going to minimize my question box now. I'm just going to now move on to the questions. Salva, for question number 1, maximum 20 minutes, which is what we'll do tomorrow for question number 1. For section B, not more than 10 minutes. So maximum 10 minutes for question section 2 and maximum 20 minutes for section 1. That's the reading time that I would recommend. Yup, Joy, absolutely. I think if you've read the textbook once, you just let go of it now and focus on the revision kit entirely. Zunaira, there is absolutely no guideline for the number of lines. You could write half a page and still get a 0. You could get 1 line and get 1 more whole mark. So remember, as long as you're answering the requirement, that is what the focus has to be. You cannot focus on the length of the answer. You have to focus on the answering techniques. Joy, I do feel that you should read the textbook once. If you've not taken any tuition, if you've not studied with a learning partner, then please read it once. Only read. There's no learning that needs to happen, but I'm very uncomfortable recommending not skipping the textbook if you've not studied this before. If you're a retaker or if you've studied with a learning partner, then there's no problem. Skip the textbook. But if you're self-studying, then for sure read the textbook once, please. Right, guys, minimizing the chat box, can't see your questions anymore. I need to start off with your questions for the day. After the first question, we'll take a 5-minute break as well, so all of us can have a breather. Like I said, I have intentionally chosen questions which are slightly on the difficult side, and you can actually tell from the marks as well. So normally, if it's lesser marks or just the ethical parts, I could be at ease because I know I can talk about the code of ethics and get my 6-7 marks. Now, in this question, this is the first time you opened your screen or the computer, and this is the part that you have to do. We're going to do this step by step. In relation to the audit of retriever group, in relation to the audit of retriever group, evaluate the quality control, ethical, and other professional matters arising in respect of the planning and performance of group audit. So she's saying there are elements from quality control, there are examples from my ethical threats, and the difficult portion, there is some auditing or accounting mess up that has been done, and I need you to pick up those points and give me the answer for 13 marks. In the actual exam, remember, I am going to allocate 20 minutes to myself. So that's about 19.5 marks. Minutes. I'm going to allocate 20 minutes the writing time, and I could take about maybe 7 to 10 minutes to read the question. The only reason why I'm letting you take 7 to 10 minutes is because this would have other parts as well. So by spending about 10 minutes, you'll be covering other parts as well. So for now, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. You're going to read this question and tell me what you would be writing in the answer. So 10 minutes to read and type in what you find in the chat box. I'm going to open up the chat box, and Once the 10 minutes are up, I will comment on your answers, and then I'll tell you what this actual answer is. You can start now, guys. You can start straight away. Look for quality issues, look for ethical issues, look for professional issues. I'm still here. I'm just putting myself on mute, but I'm looking at the question and answer box. Super, Hamza, that's amazing. So then you should be giving me complete 13-mark answer. So go on then, Hamza. You've done this question. So let's see your 13-mark answer. I can mark you on your answering techniques then, huh? Done. Please make sure you write your answer in one message. Otherwise, I won't be able to comment on whether you're right or not. So simply picking up words from the scenario is not going to be you can't simply say this has happened. The marker will say, I know, I've read the question. Please don't send in one-word answers, Salva and Abdullah. Tell me the answer, huh? Amir, the rules of ethics will depend on each threat. You can't automatically assume that because it's a listed company, everything is going to be not allowed. You'll have to learn the code, because for some areas, even for listed companies, you can go ahead and do it with appropriate safeguards. So Godfrey, so what? If the audit manager instructed you not to concentrate on certain areas, so what? Salva, very well done. Perfect answer. Time pressure will affect the quality of audit because they might overlook important areas. That's 1 out of 13. Zuhur, no, I won't give you marks for the way you worded this. It's too generic. The lack of supervision has to be linked to something other than a simple discussion point as well. Godfrey, absolutely right. So what? If junior staff has been given risky area, how is that wrong? So you'll have to, for every single point that you pick up, I need the answer to so what? Rehan, done. Time pressure because of poor planning, very well done. And then quality of work would be compromised. Abdullah, although your answer is absolutely correct, you could have divided this into 2 marks, but I'll give you 1 for the way you worded this. Absolutely correct, Dua. Are you also from my existing batch? Your answer is so spot on. And I know I've done this question with you guys, huh? Amir, done. I can link that to direction. I can link this to supervision as well. Hamza, I won't give you marks for saying lack of technical knowledge of audit team members until you explain what the problem is. I'll give you 1 mark for saying material by nature, but then so what? If they didn't do all of these procedures, if they have poor knowledge, so what? Shireen, very well done. Very well worded as well. Perfect wording. Abdullah, no. The ethical issue needs to be linked to the code of ethics. You can't simply write it's unacceptable and therefore poor planning. You need to link it to the code of ethics and give me the answer accordingly. Amir's supervision is ongoing. So if there were continuous problems and there was an indication that no senior person came to discuss this, that's lack of supervision. That the entire audit was handled by juniors and seniors, and there was no manager or partner who came to see if everything was in order. Richard, very well done. I love the way you worded this. Juniors checking each other's work means quality because they're both inexperienced at the same level. Zahoor, very well done. No hierarchical review. Zunaira, no. I won't give you marks for the way you worded this. You'll have to be slightly more specific in terms of why do you have an issue regarding this? So there's no objectivity which is compromised. That's the wrong word to use. I'm going to wait another 4 minutes. I'm just going to mark the correct answers that I've received up till now and then direct you towards the areas that you haven't answered. Christine, no, I'm not going to give you marks for that. That's too generic. If you don't tell me which review was not done well, then I'm not going to give you any mark for this point at all. Salva, very well worded. So you've given me the answer to this was time pressured. I've not really received the right answers, Anthony, because it's everyone is getting their own answer. Only I can see them. So you can't see the other person's answers. Only I can see them. Up till now, the majority answers are being marked on the screen. Sorry, not this one. Only one person identified this one. This is the second answer. These are the only two common answers that have been given to me correctly. Godfrey, very well done. You're the second or the third person who's given me this answer. So the fact that the management is unskilled tells me I'll have to be more alert to errors as well. Richard, very well done. Very well worded. This is a judgmental area, and then juniors should not be given work on this judgmental area. So Salva has written, the manager has not given time. I'll give you that mark. So overall, the manager's attitude basically tells me, yeah, there was problem with the quality of work. I'll give you that mark, Salva. O'Brien, that's very generic. You'd have to be a bit more specific. Why do you think there was lack of competence by the manager? So you have to tell me what makes you think this manager is not very qualified. There is no WhatsApp group, guys. There is no WhatsApp group. I know I've been asked this over and over again. There is no WhatsApp group that has been made. Rehan, very well done. Directors' emoluments is material by nature. It's a highly risky area. You cannot call it low risk. Shireen, very well done. Shireen, very well done. Sample selection has not been done properly. Remember, sampling risk is a part of detection risk. So that's spot on as well. Just waiting another minute and then I'll debrief this for you guys. Nithya, very well done. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but this is very well worded. A recently qualified person, just because he took the paper, does not mean that you have the skills to be doing this calculation. I just did ATX. I can do the calculation for you. That's not happening, dude. That is extremely unprofessional, goes against professional competence and due care as well. Amir, very well done. Perfectly worded. Dua, very well done. There's self-review and the ethical threat as well. All right, guys. I'm just going to minimize the question and answer box, so I can't see your answers anymore. I'm going to talk about, just give me a second, the entire debrief, focusing on my answer as a student. So I'm going to do this step by step, and that's exactly what I expect you to do in the actual exam as well. You'll have to look for each area properly and then explain the answer as well. So I'm changing my screen and it's visible now. Okay. So the first time when I was reading the question, I would be using the highlighting tool to highlight my actual answers. Starting off with the very first point, which was the audit has been quite time pressured. Anyone who simply copy pastes that would get a big fat 0. You have to explain, so what? If the audit was time pressured, this would be a huge planning issue. This could lead to higher detection risk as well. So if I do my work in a hurry, I will not be able to detect material fraud or error. This is also indicative of poor planning. Then moving on to the red part, the fact that they feel directors' emoluments are considered to be immaterial is completely wrong. You get 1 mark for saying directors' emoluments are related party transactions, therefore they're material by nature. Another mark for saying that they have not gathered sufficient appropriate evidence regarding a material area. Remember, in reality, you have not audited a material area properly, which ultimately means you will end up giving the wrong opinion. So you can't simply copy paste the question. You have to, for a single mark, explain the so what element as well. The team was also instructed not to use statistical sampling. Remember, this is something called sampling risk. The sample does not represent the population, which could mean as auditors, you would not be able to detect material fraud or error. Remember, each explanation point gets a separate mark. Most of you were able to give me the answer to the next one. Were not able to give me the answer to the next one. You did pick up that there was no hierarchical review, but only 2 of you picked up the fact that juniors were working on going concern. Remember, the fact that juniors were given this work is indicative of poor planning. This is a subjective area. This should not have been given to juniors at all. And because there was no hierarchical review, your answer would be that juniors would not have been able to pick up each other's problems. Most of you did not give me the answer to the ethical problems in the format that I told you. Starting off with the brown element, the fact that the controller was struggling to calculate deferred tax increases the risk of material misstatement, which means as auditors, we need to be alert that there could be more errors in this area as well. Because I have just studied this in college indicates you did not have the skills to do it and you have breached the principle of professional competence and due care. None of you gave me the light green answer. I need you to be very careful that these are the easiest marks. Calculation of tax. So let's go. I'm going to go to the handout, go all the way down where the tax services are mentioned over here. Look at this. So tax calculation for listed companies are not allowed. So in my answer, the format followed would be exactly what you see on the screen right now. 1 mark for saying self-review. There is no other threat in that. 1 mark for saying for listed companies, this is not allowed, and therefore this should not have been done. Don't write, don't do it, it's too late. But the fact, your conclusion is that it was actually not allowed to do this calculation for a listed company. Once again, none of you was able to pick up the fact that there were two separate threats in that. Remember, I'm referring to the code again. Tax calculation is separate. Tax planning is separate. So in this question, there was tax planning, 1 mark for explaining self-review, 1 mark for explaining advocacy as well. And then another mark for saying you were not qualified for calculating tax, you are not qualified for giving tax planning recommendations. And then based on the entire question above, was the partner sleeping? How come all of that was happening without the partner taking action? So you get 1 mark for explaining that all of this is indicative of poor supervision on the partner's end. Remember, supervision is the partner's responsibility. He can delegate it to the manager or supervisor, but ultimately it is still his responsibility. So in the exam, 7 to 10 minutes where I read the question, use the highlighting tool and highlight words like time pressured, sample selection, etc., etc. Then in the next 19.5 minutes, I'm going to convert this into headings. Time pressured, explain what the problem is. Emoluments considered low risk, explain what the problem is. I will upload this annotated answer as well, so don't worry too much about this one. Okay for us to continue, guys? I've picked up a mix of questions. Okay. Moving on to the same handout, and we're now going to be doing question number 2. If you are a student who does not know accounting or audit, then you are going to struggle with this one. Once again, let's read the requirement first. It says, comment on the quality of the planning and performance of the audit, discussing quality control and other professional issues. So the easy ethics marks, unfortunately, they are gone. 10 marks basically means 15 minutes in the actual exam. Right now, I want you to start reading from the very first line. Tell me where quality has been compromised, so what, and any professional issues that you've picked up. Professional could mean audit has been done incorrectly or accounting issues were not identified. You can start now, guys. Okay, I've had answers coming through. No, Zahur. Okay, so if she has not mentioned ethics, then normally there would be no threats from the code. If you want to talk about general ethical issues like lack of integrity on the management's part, that's fine. But normally, if she hasn't, see, if she simply, Zahur, says, okay, discuss the code, sorry, discuss the note, then that's fine. You can write anything and everything. But in this question in particular, there is nothing from the code of ethics. So think twice before you say, oh my God, could I link this to a threat from the code of ethics? All right. Guys, unless you can't write lack of supervision, unless you specify what makes you think there was a lack of supervision. Very well done, Godfrey. Part qualified supervisor is the problem. Salva, very well done. You can't follow last year's working papers because circumstances would have changed. Adil, you have to explain why this is a problem. Very well done. The part qualified supervisor is a professional competence issue. Perfect. Adil, you'll have to tell me why you think there is an understaffed audit. So Yolanda, your answers were correct. Everything that you've said up to now, so very well identified. I'm going to mark the correct answers that you guys are giving me. The common ones, huh? If it's only one person who's given me that answer, I'm not marking that because I want to see. So part qualified is an issue. This you've picked up correctly. I know you're writing supervision, but could you please tell me why? I saw lots of people saying no direction, no supervision, but could you please pick up points from the scenario which makes you think that's the problem? And why are you, Adil, no, understaffed is because of this line, the third part that I've outlined, Adil. For a listed client, and I think this is a listed client, hang on. Yeah, it's a listed client. Only 2 people were doing the entire audit. So that is an understaffed audit. Salva, very well done. So very similar to what we did right now. This cannot be true because these are transactions with directors and they are material by nature. Yup, Amir, very well done. Only 2 people allocated to a listed client is indicative of poor quality, poor planning. There you go, Munib. That's the answer. All of you who were saying there was no Anthoniel as well and Munib as well. You're absolutely right. The fact that he was there on the first day of planning and then he's never shown his face is the supervision issue. The fact that no manager was there to review our papers prior to the final audit clearance meeting is a separate mark as well. So Hamza, why is share-based payment a risky area? What makes you think it should be a risky area? Is it because it's identified as a why? I won't give you any marks for this until you tell me exactly. So you have to tell me it's a related party transaction, Hamza, plus also look at the screen. Number 6 as well. Not only is it a related party transaction, so material by nature, it was also introduced for the first time this year. So these are two separate marks. Ans, no, I will not give you marks for the first half. I'll happily give you marks for calling it a related party and telling me it's material by nature. Are there no marks for your valuation of SAR is based on estimates? I'm waiting to see if anyone has picked up the accounting issue. There are problems regarding their accounting issue as well. So the part qualified accountant is proving that he's part qualified. Let's see if you guys can prove that you know your SPR. Zahoor, very well done. Remember, guys, this is cash settled. Jeremy, that's perfectly correct. Remember, the credit does not go to equity. The credit has to go to liability. So incorrect accounting is point number 7. Very well done. Any comment on the work that was done on an expert? Salwa, are you sure it's 35%? I don't think that could be, that's correct. I think this is immaterial by amount, but material by nature. Richard, very well done. You could get a good 3 to 4 mark answer by explaining the fact that they were super impressed by the valuer's website. They did not check their competence. They did not check their independence. They did not review their work. Salva, very well worded. Yolanda, no. Equity is overstated and liabilities are understated. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. You absolutely can calculate materiality. And I think, if I'm not wrong, this is immaterial by amount, but it's material by nature because it's a related party transaction. I'm just going to give it another minute and then I'll debrief this for you. Just changing my screen. If any other answer comes through, I'll comment on it. I do feel that some of you did not pick up some easy marks. So I'm just going to share my screen now, which is now changed. Yep, Zahoor, you get separate marks for saying you did not check the competence of the valuer and separate marks for saying this is a first time introduction, so it's material automatically or risky automatically. Right, guys, my question box has been minimized. I'm not going to write on the screen. I'll just refer to the answers that are numbered over there. Most of you were able to pick up that the fact that he's a part qualified chartered accountant as a supervisor of a listed company is a big deal. Remember, for a listed company, you need to be extra careful. So the fact that he's part qualified and a listed company means quality has been affected. And this is pretty much proven by the fact that he does not know IFRS 2. Then the second point, which is the final clearance meeting is next week and the review is happening now. This means there was no engagement partner review of the working papers. It's too close to the final meeting. The third point is 2 people only for a listed client. So insufficient staff for auditing a listed client. Point number 4, she gave separate marks from point number 2. The fact that there was no manager who was replaced during the audit means there was no ongoing supervision. So Mr. Partner did not bother coming, and there was no manager when Rodney fell ill. He was not replaced at all. That's point number 4. If in doubt, follow last year's working papers. That's incorrect. Circumstances change, and therefore my audit approach could potentially change as well. Point number 6, them saying this is not a high risk area is completely wrong. This is a related party transaction. It is material by nature. None of you picked up point number 7. Remember, the SARs were granted on 1st July, at which date they were valued. This is cash settled. They have to be revalued at the year end as well. So they were valued at the grant date, but they were not revalued, which is my accounting professional point. Point number 8 had lots of marks. Simply looking at the website is not enough. You did not check the independence, you did not check the competence, you did not evaluate the report. Point number 9 was your credit to your equity reserve, which is wrong because the credit has to go to liability. You do get marks for saying this is immaterial by amount, but because it's a related party transaction, it is material by nature. So I've just put this onto the screen so you know in the actual exam, this is what you're expected to do. You're expected to comment on each point that you find. Yolanda, absolutely correct. You could word it in any one way. 1 mark for saying competence not checked, 1 mark for saying independence not checked, 1 mark for saying work or report not evaluated. Remember, before relying on the work of an expert, you need to get a copy of their report and evaluate the assumptions, methodology, etc. as well. So if you didn't do that, then that ultimately means you cannot gather sufficient appropriate evidence. Salva has given me a very good point. She's saying because of the CBE, we cannot annotate. I need to, just give me a second. I'm just going to put you guys on free screen for a second. And I'll tell you how to do this instead of annotation. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm just going to open up a blank Word document, huh? Just a minute. I'm still here, just trying to type up this thing. So just give me a second, huh? Okay, finally my Word document has opened. Okay, so there you go. So we'll pretend this is your question screen and this is your response area, huh? And we'll pretend this is your, this is your entire question that you're reading for the first time, okay? So this is the strategy that you have to follow in the actual exam, in your mocks and everything as well. So when you read the audit is time pressured, I'm going to highlight this in my actual exam and then quickly, while reading, convert this into a heading. Then when I read, there was, they felt that this was not a risky area, highlighted this and copied this as a heading. Once I finish reading this, I'm going to convert this into my each answer. So the audit was time pressured. Which means there is a high detection risk. So instead of annotation, which actually takes time, you can save time by highlighting them as key points. And then once you read the question, you write down the answer. Otherwise, what you would normally do is you'd first annotate, then you convert it into an answer, which takes more time. So please do this. Trust me, I have seen this working, provided you practice this properly. Ans, there's no list that I can give you, unfortunately. And why are you saying EPS is material by nature? Are you talking about the disclosure? Remember, EPS is a disclosure that you're talking about. It's not a double entry, huh? So there's no list of items which are material by nature. Right, guys, let's take a quick 5-minute break and then resume with the next question. Anyone who doesn't want to take the break and is very excited about doing more questions can start question number 3, the first part. Just the first part right now. So requirement, I'm going to put this onto the screen for 15 marks. So we're looking at 15 points for this one, huh? Otherwise, we'll resume 5 minutes from now, guys. 5 minutes, huh? All right, guys, we're going to be doing the question that you see on the screen right now. This is a 15-mark requirement. Like I said, the rule for these questions is 1 mark per point. So in terms of the actual exam, you'd be allocating about 23 minutes to yourself for writing down the answer. But for now, I'm going to give you about 10 to 12 minutes to read the question and make sure you're very clear on the requirement. So once again, the examiner has specified, we're just doing the first part right now, comment on the quality of the planning and performance of audit of Rivers score, discussing quality control, ethical and other professional issues, and you can get a few marks for next steps as well. So based on the scenario given, what needs to be done next, that would get you marks as well. You can start now, guys. I'm just putting myself on mute, but I am monitoring the question and answer box. Zuhur, I've seen your answer. Abdullah, I'm reading your answer as well. Just give me a second, starting off with Zuhur. The rest of you, please start. Done, Zuhur. You've given me the first part of the code. Very well worded. Abdullah, you will not get any marks for talking about familiarity because you've not explained it at all. That's the biggest problem, huh? Until you explain familiarity, you won't get marks for this. Zahur, please remember, it's been 8 years rather than 7, so you have to be slightly more specific in your conclusion. For listed clients, you're allowed 1 year extra, but even that has passed, huh? So when you give a conclusion, make sure you explain that, but your explanation of the code is correct. Amir, so what? If the partner did not spend enough time on the audit, so what? Zahur, you can actually download the handout as well. You can download the handout and read the question from there. I've zoomed it in. I'm not sure which part you're at. I'll just fit it in like this. But the questions handout has been uploaded, so you can download from the handout section as well. Okay. This question was particularly difficult because the marks are 15, huh? So you'll have to be very careful that you get the easy marks for answering techniques. Done, Ahmed. Very well done. You can actually use, I love the way you word the leadership responsibility. So the person who's supposed to be leading quality and managing the entire audit has only spent 2 hours on it, which means quality has potentially been compromised. That's perfect. Done, Zahur. So I've received correct answers for 2 of the points. You have concerns about the fact that for a listed client, it's been 8 years. You have concerns about the partner only spending 2 hours. Abdullah, perfectly worded. Yolanda, please remember, you will not get marks for familiarity until you explain what the problem is. Due to a close relationship, objectivity would be compromised. Until I see this explanation there, you won't get marks for familiarity at all. So she's very strict about this, huh? You have to make sure you explain this. I've received a very good answer. I'm just going to mark that. Going concern performed by an audit junior. Judgmental area, definitely not the right person to be doing this. Dua, very well done, very well worded. Adil, no marks for familiarity until you explain what familiarity is. So judgment compromised due to long association, huh? The auditor will be too sympathetic because of the close relationship and therefore judgment would be compromised. I'm going to mark Dua's answer as well. The recently promoted manager has been doing a lot of work. So I have slight concerns about her supervisory skills. Had the partner been there, I would have been fine. I have concerns because he didn't spend a lot of time along with the senior audit manager, and most of the work was done by the manager who was recently promoted. Any other points that you found, guys? So you've given me some very good answers, but of course that's not 15 marks. So I'm thinking, what would you be writing to get 15 marks? Remember, read each line carefully. You could potentially be getting some very easy marks in the paragraph that you missed out on. So let me have a look. I'm sure 70 people combined can get 15 out of 15. All right, Zuhur, I'll give you those marks as well. The total hours spent on a listed client do not seem sufficient. Agreed. Going to mark that. I hope you haven't read the answer. Perfect. It's a very good answer, Zuhur. Hamza, I have no issues in the assistant not being qualified. I have issues in the assistant working on going concern. So the way you worded this is a 0. Because remember, assistant auditors can be part qualified, right? Let the poor kids complete their ACCA in their own time. So I have no issues in the audit assistant being part qualified. The issue is them working on going concern. Christine, very well done. I was hoping someone would pick this up. Rehan, there is no fee dependence. Or if you just forget the word fee dependence, the rest of your answer is correct. Adil, no. You have old knowledge. For listed companies, you're allowed 7 years plus 1 year of flexibility and then a 5-year gap. So your knowledge for the code is really old, Adil. Please use the handout I've given you to learn the new code, huh? Abdullah, no. The fact is not fee dependence, because remember, fee dependence arises because of recurring assignments. The problem is that it's more than the audit fee. So there is definitely a self-interest thread there, primarily because it's significantly more than the audit fee, and I have no idea what work has been done. Yolanda, very well done. Good wording. I'm just going to wait another 2 minutes and then I'll debrief this answer for you guys. Please send in your answers so I can tell you where you're going wrong. Remember, you would know the point. So you know there's a problem, but if you can't explain the problem, then you won't be able to get marks for this, huh? Munib, very well done. So the fact that he's spending more time on the non-audit work as opposed to audit does lead to self-interest threat. So rather than fee dependence, it's more of like, giving more time to something which is more financially beneficial for me. Just waiting another minute or so. Very well done, Salva. I genuinely did not think anyone would pick up that point. Please understand, management selecting the sample is really bad. They would obviously pick up the samples which are more profitable in order to manipulate the going concern conclusion. Done, Hamza? Perfect wording. All right. I'm just going to start with the debrief, giving it another minute to see if anyone else is sending in their answer. All right, guys, changing my screen to the annotated answer. I am slightly concerned that none of you gave me the next steps, huh? You're not really following the answering format as well, which is why some of the next steps are automatically skipped. So I'm going to minimize the question and answer box. I can't see anything anymore. I'm just going to number and annotate. Starting off with the 8-year time period. You get 1 mark for explaining familiarity, 1 mark for explaining self-interest, 1 mark for next steps, which means Bob needs to be replaced. You get 1 mark for explaining the code says listed company 7 years, 1 year flexibility, and then a 5-year gap. And then you get another mark for saying, hang on, the firm's policies regarding ethical issues are really weak because they should have identified and rotated this right away. How come the firm did not identify there was a problem and did not replace or rotate Bob? So 5 out of 15 if you do this step by step. At the end of the question, after reading everything, I get 1 mark for saying, are you sure the unmodified opinion is even correct? Based on the complete mess up of work that has happened below, I don't think this is the correct opinion. 1 mark for saying Bob did not spend enough time, quality compromised. Senior manager did not spend enough time, therefore the work was done by an inexperienced person, quality compromised. 173 hours not enough for a listed company. So remember, you can't simply copy paste the point, you'll have to explain in 1-2 sentences what the problem is. Moving on to the next word. By the way, number 11 is something that is being tested a lot. Lack of documentation is indicative of something being fishy or wrong. Are you sure any work was even done? Maybe this was simply a bribe for an unqualified opinion. Also, they have not told me what the other assignment was. Is it even allowed for listed clients? This could potentially have self-review threat as well. The fact that Bob is doing so much work increases familiarity. The fact that the fee is a lot more than audit fee increases self-interest and intimidation. Make sure you explain each of them. Then, inexperienced team member working on going concern, the sample is not big enough. You remember, and if you miss this, there are 20 contracts in total. They've only selected 5 ones, and those 2 were selected by the management. So a huge chance that going concern review was not done properly, and no one told me that the unqualified junior used assumptions from last year. Remember, going concern means the next 12 months. So using assumptions from the last year is insufficient work. In terms of next steps, there were some easy marks. The firm has weak client acceptance procedures. Before accepting that special investigation, proper acceptance procedures should have been carried out. This was not done. This is a listed company. A QCR is mandatory. There is no indication that a QCR was done. Remember, all ethical threats regarding the partner's rotation in particular need to be communicated to those charged with governance, and there is no indication this was communicated to the audit committee. So as a part of your rotation safeguard, you should have told those charged with governance the fact that it's been 8 years for the partner, he now needs to be rotated. I'm going to open up the question and answer box. Any questions, guys? Absolutely. Dua has a very good question. Please remember, it is not the firm which has an issue with long association. Okay? It's the partner. It's always the partner. Firm has been auditing the client for 20 years. I don't care. As long as the partner for listed clients is rotated every 7 years. Dua, is that okay? Okay, super. All right, guys, moving on to the second part to this. So we're on a roll today, doing one question after the other. It relates to a completely different client. I actually, Salva, don't recommend anything. I don't follow BPP or Kaplan in my actual classes. I do questions directly from the past exams. So I'm equally okay with both. You could do BPP or Kaplan. I recommend BPP to my students because I've always, even when I was studying ACCA about 20 years ago, I found BPP better for theoretical papers. But you could use Kaplan. There's absolutely no difference. While I'm actually teaching, you know, the questions that I'm doing with you right now, they're direct exam questions. So I don't take them from any kit. All right, guys, I'm not helping you with the requirement at all. I'm going to get you to read this and come up with the answer yourself. If you were listening to me in the first hour of the class, you should be able to get 10 out of 10 over here. Also, if you've prepared group audits. This has some very important parts from group audits as well. So read the requirement first and then come up with the answer, please. I will be sending through all annotated answers at the end of the session to the ACCA team, and they'll upload them as handouts. Huh? All right, the client is listed. Abdullah, if you can write your answer in 2 separate steps, that would actually be 2 marks. Remember, I said sufficient staff is a separate point, skills is a separate point. So if you could divide that like this, and those would be amazing 2 separate marks. Yolanda, so in terms of scope of work, what would that affect? You started off very well, but you need to wrap it up by either talking about the fee or talking about the staff or talking about the time. So when you want to consider the amount of work that has to be done, which element does it really affect? So that's the sort of conclusion that would be needed for this one. Yes, you will have to, because those are separate points. Absolutely, Yolanda. Absolutely, yes. I'll show you the answer in a little while, and I'll tell you how easy it is to get these as separate marks. Yep, Fatma. In terms of foreign subsidiary, it's not the food industry, it's more the fact that I would need to be aware of international laws, etc. So Christine, like I said, I'm more concerned about the international laws um, with which any non-compliance could mean I need to have a specialized team. Remember, in terms of nature of client, she might not give you marks for any specialized ingredient related points, because you can always get an expert for that, huh? Absolutely, Salva. So because of the component element, you'll need more work as well. Adil, again, you'll have to link it to a factor. If it's a foreign subsidiary which is significant, that means what for me? More work, more fee? No, no, Noor. The incentive payment, do not look at in the context of ability to pay audit fee, link it to integrity. The incentive payment, the bright payment, is indicative of poor management integrity. Very well done, Rehan. Amazingly worded. Firm's reputation by association is going to be affected. It is the bribe, Salva, yes. Abdullah, beautifully worded. By association, associating with such firms could mean damage to my firm's reputation as well. By associating with such clients, sorry. Waiting another minute or so, and then I'll show you the list of answers that will help you figure out what you can write in terms of easy marks for accepting such clients. Hamza, I, the way you worded this, I'm not going to give you any marks. This is not a factor, the way you worded this, that I would consider before I accept a client. All right, Adil, so you will need specific communication. So in terms of factors to consider before accepting a client, that could mean what? So I know I'll have to communicate with quite a few components. So I will have to evaluate their competence. I need time. I will need resources to manage that. You're absolutely right. So make sure you try and link it to the factors that need to be considered, huh? Abdullah, very well done. Remember, a factor to consider is management integrity. Very well done, Rehan. Very well worded. Yep, Richard, the auditing of intra-group transactions, particularly getting information from competent auditors, because I will not be their auditor, would take time and it would be a complex procedure. Salva, very well done. Oh, have they suggested low fee? Let me have a quick look. Why have I forgotten? I'm just going to have a quick look to see, have they suggested low fee? The subsidiaries. Oh yeah, it has. That's fine. Done. So low fee leading to compromised quality. That's absolutely correct. So commercial consideration. Rehan is the only one who's given me the Farland answer, by the way. Right, guys, I'm going to share my screen with you and I'm going to tell you. That's fine, Rehan. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to tell you, and I've minimized the question and answer box now. I'm going to cover this one by one to tell you what the easy marks in particular were. So none of you gave me, I'm going to do this in green first. The easy marks were customer due diligence or know your client. Before accepting any new audit client, remember, you have to conduct customer due diligence procedures. In terms of scenario linkage, the group is a large multinational client and therefore resource availability needs to be considered. She gave 2 separate marks for competence. The fact that it has specialized operations in many countries and because it has foreign subsidiaries as well, the fact that I would need to have knowledge of their local financial reporting standards. Remember, when it's all being consolidated, it has to be done according to IFRS. Scenario linked was integrity indicator because of the poor reputation. Another integrity indicator is the illegal payments. You could talk about the threat in terms of either self-interest or intimidation, which is the audit fee, easiest mark that you could get. Some important scenario linked marks you could talk about, even if you didn't think of them, just for future reference. You need to understand why they have more than or one audit firm for different components. You need to be able to evaluate the work of the competent auditor. You'll have to evaluate the competence. This will all take time. Remember, this is a complex, risky client because it's a group structure with lots of consolidation. So this is risk. All of this will lead to risk. This will have an impact on fee. This will have an impact on time. This will have an impact on the resources that I have to allocate. With regards to Farland, there was only one person who gave me this answer. Remember, they are not actually making financial statements normally because they're not required to. When they make it specifically for audit, then this will be a lot of risk. So any discussion related to Farland would be separate marks. Because I'll be communicating with different auditors, access to information, ability to communicate with these auditors is a separate mark. For international, and this is again the easy mark, for international audits, logistical issues like language barriers, travel cost, cost implications can get up to 2 marks in the AAA exam. And by the way, although it's not written over here, she gave another easy mark for preconditions of audit as well, if you explain them. So reporting framework, responsibilities, etc., etc. Any questions regarding this one, guys? Is having a group audit expert a requirement because of the complexity of the audit? Salva, no. The answer is no. I don't need to have an expert just because it has a lot of subsidiaries. At the end of the day, it's basic accounting. I need to have someone who has experience of auditing consolidated financial statements. So it's not about an external expert. It's about someone with relevant experience. Is that okay, Salva? Super. All right, guys, one last question before we wrap up for the day. I've intentionally chosen one which you might struggle with a bit. If you read at 1 mark, 1 mark for preconditions of audit Maneeb. Considering preconditions of audit, after explaining them, is 1 mark in total. All right, guys. So read the requirement. In a bad mood, obviously, in this exam attempt, discuss the audit implications of the email from Len and recommend any further actions to be taken, 8 marks. Let's see how many marks you can get. If you're listening to me, if you were listening to me in the first 1 hour, you should be able to come up with this answer. After you've read the question once, the first thing I want you to do is tell me which topic this relates to. If you can do that, then you'll be able to tell me what the answer is. Abdullah, you're spot on. I'm not reading out your answer, but you're absolutely correct. O'Brien, very well done. Fatma, very well done. Now can you, okay, it is laws and regulations, very well done. I need the answer for these 8 marks, please. I told you the minute you pick up that this is a non-compliance question, you can easily get 8 out of 8 if you follow a certain sequence. Let's see if any of you remember that. Remember, you'll have to write your answer in 12 minutes and you'll have to write 8 points. So let's see if you can cover those 8 marks. Abdullah, no, very vague, no marks for the way you've worded this. Done, O'Brien, very well done. So in terms of financial statement impact, what would that be? Very well done, Dua. Love the way you started this. Dua is the only one who remembers the actual format. Start off with explaining the responsibilities. You get 1 mark for saying this is a health and safety breach. Literally just that one line. 1 mark for management responsibility, 1 mark for auditor's responsibility. If you just give me 1 second, I'll see if I can put up. This is what we did earlier. And, oh, hang on, what was that? No, that's something else. Here you go. So this is what we did earlier, and this is what I said you should be writing when you identify non-compliance, huh? So there you go. Just a quick reminder, think of the financial statement impact, think of the reporting that needs to be done, and come up with the answer, please. So procedures on the identified breach. What type of non-compliance is it? Any indication regarding management's integrity? Is it intentional? Any indication regarding weak controls, impact on financial statements, and also reporting. I'm going to wait for another 2 to 3 minutes. So when I was talking at the start of the class and I said, you know the answer, you won't be able to get marks if you don't practice. This is exactly what it meant. All of you were able to pick up this is non-compliance. The test now is, can you get 8 marks to explain this non-compliance? Very well done, Salva. In your answer, you have 2 marks, by the way. It's intentional and integrity are 2 separate marks. Oh, Zuhur, I'm just going to mark this for you. So 1, 2, 3, 4 marks in your answer, Zuhur. Very well done. O'Brien, I'll give you that mark, but I'm not really sure you should be writing this down. I can't assume there's a huge outflow. Are they actually going to shut down the company? That would be a better answer. Maybe the impact of the breach would be such because, you know, this is affecting public interest. Those poor humans have eaten that fruit that had chemicals on it. So rather than saying huge outflow of money affecting going concern, I would ideally want you to say company being shut down, which would affect going concern. Guys, when there's normally a breach of law, which accounting standard needs to be discussed? So in terms of financial statement impact, it is IS 37, Yolanda. Very well done. So I need you to tell me that the impact on the financial statements could be a provision expense or a disclosure as well. So don't be scared to talk about accounting, guys. You are ultimately doing an audit paper. Waiting another minute and then I'll show you the answer. Very well worded, Dua. The directive paying this means a huge problem, and we should be skeptical of any representations that we've taken from the management. Yolanda, it could result in either a liability which needs disclosure or a provision which is a double entry. Remember, if it's probable outflow, expense debit, provision credit. If it's possible, then a disclosure. Zuhur, you need to discuss with the management whether they were aware of the breach or not. All right, guys, I'm going to put up the answer on the screen. It's in my scribbly writing, so apologies for that. I wanted to make sure you cover this step by step. Yep, the issue needs to be told to those charged with governance, Shalanda. That's a separate mark. So in terms of your answer, first mark for management responsibility, second mark for external auditor's responsibility, one mark for actually saying a breach has happened of health and safety law. Another mark for saying the bribe is indicative of the fact that this was intentional and at least one senior management person was aware of this. 5, 6, and 7 relate to financial statement impact. I'm going to put this together and you have to discuss this for separate marks. One impact could be provision or disclosure for the fine. Another impact could be shutdown, therefore an uncertainty disclosure. Another impact could be inventory valuation. Remember, they have some fruits in their inventory which could potentially be overstated. They have sprayed chemicals on this. This probably needs to be scrapped. You need to discuss this with management and those charged with governance. Please, please, please talk about reporting. Because this fruit was sold to the public, this potentially needs to be reported to external authorities as well. You get 1 mark for saying this is an exception to confidentiality because of public interest. Remember, as per our code of ethics, we have to follow confidentiality, but there are exceptions to this. And this is one of them. And this is also indicative of poor integrity on the management's part. By the way, you get separate marks for saying this also means weak internal controls. Any questions regarding this, guys? This was the last question that we were meant to do today. I have the standard answer, but then I've also summed this up in steps. You know exactly the steps you have to follow, and you can do this for each non-compliance. Obviously, it will be the impact needs to be linked to the scenario, depending on which law has been breached, but normally you could write 5 and 6 in all non-compliance instances. I have nothing more on the agenda for the day, guys. I still have 10 minutes in case there's anything else that you need to know. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the case study approach, the professional marks, the technique for business risks, the technique for risk of material misstatement, and then we're going to be doing one question. So we will do one case study which has business risk and audit risk both. We do not have a WhatsApp group. So we haven't set up a WhatsApp group, guys. Any other questions? I think sure. Very soon it's going to be uploaded. Zuhur, no, we're not going to be discussing that because that's a knowledge part. So the change in the syllabus is actually a knowledge element. Absolutely, Salva, absolutely. You should be practicing these questions after the end of the webinar. Yep, Yolanda, you discuss both, you get separate marks for both. Hopefully, Dua, fingers crossed. I'm not sure. I'll send it right away, but I'm not sure if the team can upload this right away. I think it'll happen sometime tomorrow. In terms of confidentiality, according to the Code of Ethics, there's a fundamental principle called confidentiality. Normally, about the client, you can't share information with unauthorized parties, but an exception is, for example, if there's money laundering, for example, if it's in public's interest. So in this case, your answer would say, yes, confidentiality would be breached, but because it's in public's interest, it is okay because it's allowed as per the code. So yeah, yes, if it's in public interest, it's, I think it's voluntary, no? From what I remember. Salva, no, unfortunately, we don't offer that service. Scans does have a product, but I don't do that marking. It's a marking team who does it. Adil, no difference in AAA. Evaluation, discussion, assessment in AAA, there's absolutely no difference. Yeah, Yolanda, thank you. So as far as AAA concerned, it's pretty much the same thing. Salva, are you talking about accounting standards? So there are two. What you do is, if you give me 1 second, I'm just going to be, no, actually on day 3, which is the day after tomorrow, I'm going to give you a list of areas in terms of, standards, identify the ones that you're not comfortable with, and then revise them from IS plus summaries. So use IS plus summary to revise the standards that you don't know. So you're okay with IS 37, forget about that. You're not okay with IFRS 8, revise that from IAS plus summaries. And there's another website. There's a lady called Sylvia. I think her website is called CPT Box or something. I love the way she summarizes very difficult standards as well. So you could either revise from IAS plus summaries or just revise it from that website called CPT Box or something. No, Joy. For AA, the level is much lower and the technique for AAA is very different. So no. Zahur, tomorrow I'm going to upload a summary of that article that you're talking about. And I've explained in very simple terms what prioritizing risk means. So at the end of tomorrow's session, because that relates to risk, if you still don't understand it, I'll give you an overview in the last 5 minutes. But wait for the summary of that article that's going to be uploaded tomorrow. Salva, in AAA, knowing the answering techniques and using the highlighting tool and copy pasting that as headings are basically time-saving tricks. As far as the answer is concerned, it's literally word processing document, and she does not want you to make your answer very fancy. So I will talk about them. If you know the answering techniques, you'll automatically be able to save time. Yeah, hang on. If you just give me a second, I'll just, so for example, if you need to, forget that. Hang on. So suppose you do not know IFRS 8. So you simply type IFRS 8 IS plus summary. And this one page is more than enough for you to know the actual standard. And there was another one, hang on. IFRS 8, I've forgotten her page. Yeah, it's called CPT box. There you go. It's called CPT box. So just write IFRS 8 CPT box. I genuinely find that the first time you read a standard, the way she summarizes this is very helpful. So you can do your revision of those standards from here as well. So she'll tell you like the entire standard in literally one page. No, it's not just you, Salva. I think it just gets, it takes a bit of time to get used to it. So people who have taken their applied skills exams on the computer, they're very comfortable with SP level as CB as well. So they haven't had to transition. So for them, the paper-based would have been more difficult. So, but those of who you had studied as a paper-based exam, then yes, it's slightly difficult to concentrate. But it's just a matter of practice, Salva. You just try and attempt some questions, do one question every day, even if it's a 6-mark question. So in the next 30 days, you would have done 30 such questions as practice. Adil, are you okay with the pages? So there's CPD box or IS plus summary. I find the CPD box simpler to understand and recap. So the day after tomorrow, I'll give you a list of all those areas, pick up the ones you don't know and revise from there. All right, guys, super. Thank you so much. Fingers crossed for a very fruitful session tomorrow as well. Aim being 25 marks, which are going to be there in every single exam attempt. Until then, you stay safe, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. It's a goodbye from my end. Goodbye.